The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome to the MX Group's webinar on getting the most from marketing technology. I'm Suzanne Martin, and I am a career marketer like many of you. And I started out in big corporations, and then I moved through some high-growth startups. And now today I lead marketing at the MX Group, which is a top 50 B2B digital and demand generation agency here in the U.S. And I'm so pleased today to welcome Gil Canare, who is the strategy leader in modern marketing which is SiriusDecisions, of course. We're big followers of Sirius here at the MX Group, and I bet most of you are as well. Now, Gil has over 15 years of strategy experience spanning both marketing and technology, and he's been with big brands like Advanced Micro, Dell, 3M, and Marriott. Welcome, Gil. Now, today's agenda is going to cover a lot of ground, but the focus is simple. There are key issues preventing marketers from easily identifying their marketing technology needs. First, of course, tech sellers love to emphasize the awesome features of their technology and not necessarily focus on what the buyers truly need. Marketers love the promise of the technology and they get excited about it, maybe don't think as much about the needs and more about the excitement. And three, no one system does it all, and there are always gaps. I'm going to add a fourth as well, which we'll talk about today too, which is that buying the technology isn't the end game. It must be operated, of course, and that is causing a lot of big issues for marketers today. So today you're going to learn about the difference between technology features and capabilities that you need. Gil will cover how to map out those capabilities and also how to help us determine the right mix. And we're also going to help you think about how to approach the purchasing of that technology and get the operational support and services that you need to run it properly. So during the webcast here, please feel free to send in your questions at any time, and we'll get to those at the end. And this is your chance to connect with a SiriusDecisions analyst, so feel free and let's get those answered. So to get started, first let's level set with what some of the problems are that many of you may have already experienced. In a recent study, it was found that there are really three top issues that marketers weren't expecting when they dove in and started using the technology. First of all, it takes a lot longer than anticipated to get up and running, and it can take 12 months to over 18 months just to get the tech not just set up, but also the processes and the team optimized around it so that the overall operation runs smoothly. Secondly, there's a higher cost of ownership than was anticipated, and this is not just the initial technology investment, but also costs for integrating it with other platforms or hiring expensive specialist talent to run it. And three, specifically when you talk about that specialist talent, for example, and other resources that are used to operate the systems, these resources are in high demand, and marketers really haven't been anticipating just how hard it has been to really kind of build out the operation around it. Now, these three key trends here are causing marketers to take pause, but it's also creating some interesting solutions in the market now, like outsourcing, for example, to address them differently. So the market is learning and advancing along. So why don't we take a quick poll here and assess where everyone is at from a webinar attendee standpoint. I'm going to open a poll here and ask you a question. How does your organization currently select technologies? Do you use a capabilities-based approach today? Do you adopt technology late and when it's mature in the marketplace and kind of capture all the learnings from everyone else? Do you tend to chase the latest trend, or are you just at the bare bones level? It's like, look, we just make do with what we have. So I'm going to let you answer the questions here before we close out the poll. Give us another second or two. Okay, looks like still voting. Still some voting going on out there. Most of you almost. Here we go. About 80% voted. Anybody else want to weigh in? All right, I'm going to close the poll. Let's see where we're at. Okay, so let's share the results with everybody here. So, great, let's see what we have here. So it looks like a few of you are using a capabilities-based approach. Some of you do kind of maybe lag back and wait for the market to figure it out. And some of you are just trying to struggle and make do with what you have. So that is probably pretty typical of the mix out there today. So why don't we proceed today and give you some good structure for how to deal with that. Go back to our presentation. Okay, so all that technology that's out there, there is a large volume of it, and it is getting bigger and bigger. At Scott Brinker's MarTech conference back in March of this year, He, as you may know, puts out that lovely infographic all of us watch grow on a yearly basis. It's doubled again, and it's over 4,000 technologies now. So with so many out there, why is selection still remaining so difficult? And the key really is that there's got to be a framework to help everybody think it through. And it really is important because, again, if you're a follower, as most of us are, of course, from a modern marketing standpoint, using the SiriusDecisions demand waterfall as the foundation for what we do, effectively managing all that inbound and outbound traffic and the qualification and conversion that it's going through the funnel here in the life cycle of the lead is just not possible without the technology. But making those decisions, and making the tech and the features itself the focus of your marketing is really not what's going to help you in the end. You've got to really think about what are the capabilities I need to manage the demand waterfall. So Gil is going to help us take a look at how we can get these two things to align better. So great. So Gil, floor is yours.
Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you everyone for attending. As the lead for digital at SiriusDecisions, I get a lot of conversations with clients of all sizes, both large and small, around their need for technology. Those questions can come from all shapes and sizes. In some cases they ask, do I have enough? Sometimes they ask, do I have too much? And a lot of it does revolve around that question of, do I really need that new technology? In the end, the question that everybody's trying to answer and the challenge that everybody's trying to address is really the question of what technology is the right fit for me. And the problem that makes that interesting is the answer is very different for every organization and fundamentally specific to that org. And the way that you think about the problem really shapes how you think you're doing right now. And to illustrate that, I actually use an example that's a little bit personal. This is actually my living room. That's the media center that I have in my house. And when my wife looks at this, she lovingly refers to it as a pile of stuff. There's an Xbox, there's a Surface Pro, yes, another Xbox, and then somewhere in the back, even though she can't see it, it still kind of bothers her, the Chromecast. Now, when you look at this from a purely technology point of view, you're probably asking the same question my wife asks. Why do you need all of these things, right? Aren't they fundamentally the same? And on the surface, they might do very similar things. But when you look at it from a capabilities point of view, what do these things actually enable? It makes a little bit more sense. The Xbox is for me. I use it to watch TV and play my games. The Surface Pro is so we can do some work on that giant screen. The Chromecast is how we can throw stuff up on the screen really quickly from our other 12 devices. And then the Xbox is for the kids. That's where their games are. So when you take a look at this set of technology and you look at it from a capabilities point of view, what you find is every bit of it has a use, or at least that's what I tell my wife. Doesn't normally agree. But so what we're saying is that when you're evaluating your technology infrastructure, it's important to not look at it purely from the point of view of what technology you have, but rather what it lets you do. Because in the end, when you're buying technology, it's not the thing you're buying, it's the capabilities it lets you purchase. Now, when you think about this, it seems a little bit semantic, right? What's the difference between a technology and a capability? So let me explain that to you in a fairly straightforward way. And since I'm from Texas, I firmly believe you can explain any concept, no matter how complicated, using nothing but pickup trucks. So let's do that right now. So this is a pickup truck, and that's a pickup truck. When you look at it from a technology point of view, they're effectively the same thing, right? They both meet the definitions. They have the same basic characteristics. So if you ordered a pickup truck, you shouldn't be surprised if you get either. The reality, though, is when you look at these one level deeper and you start thinking about what they let you do, they are pretty different. One of them will let you carry a few people, the other will let you carry a basketball team. It'll affect the size of the toys you can have, or even the size of the pets you can drive around. And, oh, by the way, this one has a completely different capability, the other one doesn't at all. So this is the same thing that happens to you when you sit down and you basically order a technology rather than drilling down into the capabilities. It's not just the thing that you buy, but the capabilities that it has inside of it, the features, the benefits, all of that other stuff. Now, as a group, we've been able to kind of get along with thinking about technologies from that bucket of technologies point of view, primarily because we've been lucky and there have been pretty defined categories. If you're a modern marketing leader, then you're going to need a marketing automation platform. You'll need a Salesforce automation platform and a web content management system. And it used to be if you had one of these, you could be reasonably sure that they each did slightly unique things and you were covering your bases. But all of the people that are providing these services and software have been very busy. As a rule, every single one of them have been expanding the capabilities of their technologies because they're trying to, frankly, bust out of the categories we boxed them in. So when you look at marketing automation platforms, they're doing sales communications now. They used to be the domain of Salesforce automation. They're coming out with website personalization capabilities that used to purely belong in the web content management space. Salesforce automation is doing the same thing with campaign management, and web content management companies are starting to talk about managing active customer journeys. Oh, and just to make it even more interesting, entirely new categories are appearing, like customer success management or account-based marketing tools, that are in reality a subset and a aggregation of capabilities that exist across all of these different things. So what does this mean to you as a marketing leader? What this means is your challenge is a lot bigger now, because if you just go out and buy every piece of technology that people tell you to buy, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you have very large overlaps, and you'll have technology living in the same capabilities living in different places, and that causes a lot of redundancy and a lot of confusion. Or even though you've filled in all of the dots and circled, filled in all the circles that you think you need to fill, you'll still find out that you have some gaps. So there has to be a better way. And the way that we're talking about and the way that we're emphasizing to our clients is an approach that we call, managing technology through capabilities. And it starts by building a capabilities map. What's a capabilities map? A capabilities map is a document that outlines what you need to have, the capabilities and abilities you need as an organization in order to successfully reach your goal. In this case, we're highly focused on marketing, but you can make that statement across sales and everything else as well. In order to do this, there's two major steps. Step one is not going to be surprising. You've got to build a capabilities map. Before you can make these decisions, you need to understand not just what you need, but also the priority that you need it in, because it's going to be probably very likely that you're going to have more capabilities needed than you can afford right off the bat, so you've got to prioritize this. So how do you start? The unique thing and the very different thing that we're talking about here is when you're starting with a capabilities map, you don't think about the technology, you think about what your business goals are. Every business has a set of goals. They're usually wrapped around revenue, but the way that you get to that revenue is a little bit different, and hence the processes that you need to support are slightly different. If you're an organization that's engaged in highly transactional sales, then you're really focused on driving volume. How do I get as many people as possible through this machine? You're probably worried about being able to sell and transact online. That's a set of processes that your technology infrastructure has to support. On the other hand, if you're a company that's engaged in a very complicated, sort of long sales cycle sales that's heavily sales dependent, then you need to be able to track customers and monitor engagement. It's a completely different set of capabilities that you need, completely different set of processes. So once you identify the business goals and you really laser focus down on what processes you need to have, then you need to turn those processes into capabilities. Being able to sell online means you need an e-commerce. It means you need to be able to transact and manage customers and manage security. All of those things are going to require capabilities, which you then have to prioritize. Typically you see it prioritized as the things you must have, the things you should have, and the things that would be great to have, but you're not necessarily out to buy it. And this, over time, is going to evolve as well. So as your business changes, as your needs change, it should be reflected in your capabilities map. If you do this correctly, you'll have a nice prioritized capabilities map, which is step one. Step two is actually putting this into action. Activating the map is the step where you then take this and turn it into actual technology decisions. It starts, first of all, by taking a look at what you already have. Every organization has some legacy set of systems. Take a look at the systems that you've got, identify the capabilities they provide, and then figure out where you have overlap and where you have gaps to the list that you've defined in the capabilities map. Once you've done that, then you've got to figure out, okay, I've got a list of things that I'm missing. I know the priority. Let's go and find out where I can get that so I can fill those gaps. Now, the other thing that's going to happen over time is salespeople are going to show up to your desk with some lovely new technology, and it's all going to look good and it's all going to look like it could help. But instead of just making the decision based on their sales efforts or what you think they can do, this is where we want you to take a look at those technology purchases you're considering and then map it back to your capabilities map. Is it filling a hole? that you don't have in your capabilities map? Is it doing things in your capabilities map better than your current things? But that's what you want to do. The map becomes the guidepost to help you drive your business decisions. Now, when you put that into practice, let's give you an example that a lot of you are probably wrestling with right now. You probably have a marketing automation platform because you need all of the capabilities that they have there. But at the same time, I suspect you've got a Salesforce automation platform as well. And as you can tell right off the bat, there's a couple of capabilities that are going to overlap. So one of the first things that you have to do now is, okay, which database am I going to use? Which touch management system am I going to use? You've got to start having these conversations around rationalizing this technology. When you extend it out to the web content management system, you'll see it's got overlap there again. Now, one of the things that you're starting to hear is you're starting to hear about customer success management or account-based marketing tools. So one of the things that you have to consider if you're thinking about buying one of those is what's the capability that thing really has. So a customer success management tool, for example, has a contact database, purchase database, and touch management. Guess what? You've got at least 2 of those already, and probably in 2 other places. So when you do this exercise, the decision to buy a customer success management tool or any other thing that you can do this with becomes an exercise in, is it bringing enough new capabilities, or do the capabilities it's bringing something that I already have that it can actually replicate in my existing system without overcomplicating my technology? So this is sort of an example of the processes that you go through and how you put that capabilities map in place.
So Gil, that was a great way to think about how to map out capabilities. And when I come at it as a day-to-day marketer, maybe I'm not using pickup trucks, but I'm using some bricks maybe and figuring out what I'm building, right? First thing I'm thinking of and what's in my head is that I need to run campaigns, and the question is, to what extent am I going to be doing that? Well, I want to run inbound and outbound, so this is going to require an automation capability. If I want to run traditional email campaigns, though, I probably don't need the power of an expensive marketing automation platform. But earlier we talked about the demand waterfall and the need to manage that, and that's where I'm at. So I think I need the capability to really be able to automate and map out a well-defined journey. So. And many of those, so I'm thinking I'm probably going to need that automation capability. Now, secondly, if I want to know what's happening beyond activity at a single touch point, I need the capability to track contact profiles as they're changing and also behavior as it goes through the demand funnel too. And the question is here, how far do I want to go? Do I need a true marketing database that separates all, separate from all my marketing tools? So as the behavior is going and tracking in and out, that database is keeping track of that. Kind of like also needing to, manage contacts going across the same account. You mentioned account-based marketing, for example. How far am I going to take that? Or am I going to be looking at it and say, well, my marketing and sales automation platforms will be sufficient if I can connect them well. Then there's lead management. Now, I need the capability to manage leads along with the sales team, of course. And I need to have to keep in mind here that this is not just about the technology, but also about those capabilities that get enabled from strategy and also processes and alignment. And lead qualification is similar. Now, this is important to me, and I'm sure to many marketers, but it can be often overlooked as a capability that really needs focus. Getting qualified leads from sales is important, but lead scoring as a tech feature in your marketing automation platform is not going to be sufficient. First of all, you've got to work with sales and align on what the definitions even are going to be for using that feature in the technology. And again, that requires sales and marketing alignment activity. And then telemarketing can be a great way to qualify leads, and people might not even know that there's technology out there that will tie that activity back into your database and your campaign activity in your sales automation platform so you can keep those leads moving effectively. Performance management is important to all of us as marketers, I'm sure. But today we need to really be very critical in thinking about how we're going to get the right data. Program effectiveness, revenue impact, you talked about the importance of knowing what your business goals are. The way you're going to be able to prove that you're meeting those business goals is through being able to track it effectively, and I need some pretty sophisticated probably capability to do that across all those platforms. And lastly, data quality has always been, an issue. But how do I ensure that as the data is flowing in and out of things that it's being kept up to date and accurate? Now I've got to have data hygiene capability. It's probably a word that marketers didn't even use a decade ago, the word hygiene. And trafficking it through all of the systems. And wow, that's a lot of capabilities, but it seems to me that these are a pretty common set for today's modern marketers. So Gil, I don't know if you agree with this, first of all, but second of all, could you also maybe help us think about, well, how would we source and go and get all this technology and operational support that we need?
No, thanks, Suzanne. That's actually a great set of examples about the kind of capabilities that you're looking for and how you have to think about it as what it lets you do rather than the technology that you're actually buying. And the great thing is if you do a capabilities map, you'll know exactly which ones of these matter and which ones you need to buy. And that actually answers one of the questions that I get all the time is, do I need to buy this? And like you said, the next question then becomes, well, where do I buy this from? Most everybody has a set of vendors that they already have versus the new ones that are knocking on your door. The question we get all the time is, where should I buy this specific capability that I know I need because I've looked at it from my capabilities map? When we look at this question of whether to buy new technologies from current vendors or new technologies from somebody else, we break it down into 4 sets of considerations. The first consideration is, what kind of capability are you trying to buy? We break it down into core. Core is exactly that. This is essential capability that does a whole gamut of things that actually provides a foundation that you're going to layer other additional capabilities on. The other set is what we call endpoint. Endpoint capabilities are things that are single, that they do one thing and they do it really well, but it's a single thing and you're never going to layer something on top of it. Think about core, for example, as your marketing automation platform or your website or your Salesforce automation. Clearly you're going to add capabilities to that from other sources. Endpoint technologies could be a media buying tool that's used for just that purpose. Even social media monitoring is an endpoint capability. So think about what kind of capability you're trying to buy. The next thing we consider is the level of complexity. Is the thing that you're buying something that's relatively straightforward, again, like a single point tool that supports one task and it's a pretty simple task, or is it something like marketing automation platform where there's all sorts of things like lead scoring, nurtures, data cleansing, all that stuff embedded in that one single technology? The next thing that we look at is the degree of adjacency. The thing that you're trying to buy, is it similar? Does it have similar or related capabilities to what you already have, or is it something different? For example, if you've got a marketing automation platform and you're looking at like a tool to identify people and incorporate their ID into your marketing, well, that's pretty similar to a marketing automation platform, or at least it's close. Versus something that does e-commerce, which is a completely different set of capabilities. The last thing that we look at is, when you look at your current vendors, look at how good they are at the capability you're actually evaluating. It doesn't matter how good they are at what they're selling you now. What matters is how good they are at what you're trying to buy next. And this is an important distinction. Just because you like and trust your vendor for whatever they're supplying now doesn't mean that should transfer to the next thing that you're considering. So how do we group these and how do we make sense of these sets of considerations? We start by looking at 2 different cases at the end of the spectrum. In one, you basically have a product where it's closely related to what you have, and the vendors that you have are good at it, versus the other case where the capabilities you're looking for are not very well or closely related to what you got and your vendors know very little about it. Well, if you're thinking about buying a core technology, you should do this. If you've got a core technology that's close to what you already have and your vendor's good at it, buy it from them. For a core technology, it's really important that it works well, it's deployed properly, and that you're comfortable with whoever's selling it. So you want to make sure that when you can, leverage your existing vendors. On the other hand, because core technologies are something that are going to provide, or core capabilities provide a basis for a number of other things, it is absolutely important that they work well. And if your existing vendors just aren't good at it or don't have a lot of experience in it, do not be afraid to go find somebody else to provide that technology. Your first priority is making sure it's working well. Now, when you take a look at endpoints, right, these single point technologies, if the complexity is really high, treat it just like a core technology. If the complexity is high enough, the same rules apply. On the other hand, if you get to the point where you're looking at an endpoint and the complexity is low, this is actually a great place to do a little experimenting. If you're going to bring in a new vendor, test out new sourcing options, this is the place to start, because in the end, your risk is relatively low here. So great place to start looking at new people and testing them out before you put them in something much higher risk.
Okay, well, Gil, when we think about, we mentioned earlier that, selecting that technology is part of the story, and then the other part is how you're going to operate it. It's probably not a good idea to start thinking about that the day the tech arrives on your doorstep. So I like to think about really the three categories of operational capability that you need to run it well. Business processes, the content and campaign element, and the day-to-day technology operations as well. As mentioned earlier, sales and marketing alignment is critical, for example, to effectively identifying and processing high-quality leads. That is something that you need to sit down and work out within your organization to make sure that, again, when you get the tech in there, it's running right and working right for you. Also, content designed for technology it's really got to be done right, because it is the fuel that makes the machine run. And also, to get the true power out of your marketing automation platform, you need to map out journeys and integrate your website, for example. So it is thinking beyond how do I run traditional marketing with technology. It's thinking, how do I get the most out of this new tool and this new platform in my life, and it's going to evolve how you market. You have to work on that. And the day-to-day operations are definitely important because they are many-faceted. It requires knowledgeable specialists. It's how you manage and measure and pull the right analytics out of the systems to optimize. And so you do need to think about, again, what are you going to put around that in terms of a team or in terms of outside resources to help you get that done. So Gil, I imagine that all of this together, kind of comes together and you think about just how important it is. Do you agree with what I'm saying here?
No, absolutely, because I think what you're bringing up is that when you think about the operations and how you actually run whatever you buy, that leads to the third question. It's how you buy. The good news is we live in the brave new world where when you order a new technology or set of capabilities, you don't just drop it off at your front door in a pallet and you have to plug it in and make it work. You have options. But in order to decide the right option, whether you bring it completely in-house, outsource it, or anything in between, you have to think about what it is you're actually buying, and you have to think about that buying decision in context. So what do we mean? We've been talking about buying buckets of capabilities wrapped up in technologies, and that's step one. The actual technology that you're buying is important, but that's not the entire set of considerations, because you've got to think about how you actually run this. In my role speaking to all sorts of companies, one of the things I hear a lot is, so we bought this thing and it's really good, but we actually don't have anybody that can run it, or we don't have the content, or we don't have this, or we don't have that. So if you're going to think about buying a technology, you've got to consider the engine, the fuel, the people that you need to keep it running. And that, once you have that, then you actually have to have the people and the processes and the skills to actually run it. Probably the most common example of this are people that will invest in a nice enterprise marketing automation platform that does a whole gamut of stuff, but in the end it ends up being a glorified email tool because they didn't plan for this. They didn't make sure they had the people. They didn't make sure they had all of these things in place in order to make it work. So when you're thinking about that when you're looking to source a capability as in part of a technology purchase, you need to make sure you're thinking about all of these other things too in order to make it work. Now, what are our options? The good news is in our modern day, we can bring it all in-house. We can buy the technology, stick it in a closet, hire some people and teams and get it done in-house. We can also insource. Insource is an interesting hybrid because what happens here is we have the teams in-house, we might have the technology in-house, but we're pulling external people in to work with our internal team sort of on a day-to-day, hand-to-hand basis and manage the technology and the capabilities and deliver the work. And then there's the traditional pure outsourcing where you basically say, hey, I've got this problem, I would like you to deal with it for me, and I'll give you guidance. All three of these things are perfectly valid approaches for any capability need. The question is making sure that you understand the realities and the strengths and the weaknesses of each. So for example, in-house has the greatest degree of control. There's no question about that because it's your technology, it's your people, it's your capabilities. The problem is the other thing that's nice about that is you actually also get to build your own internal institutional knowledge. As you manage this, as you get experience in it, you're building it in-house. Your company is starting to accrue the benefits of that. On the other side, it will take longer, right? I don't know if you guys have tried to hire anybody in a really demand area right now, like a digital strategist or a marketing automation platform people, but it's going to take a while. to staff that team. You have to first get approval for the resources, and then you've got to find the person. The other thing that happens, especially in larger orgs, is it's organizationally complex. You bring something like this in, and it's not just going to be marketing. It's going to involve IT. It's going to involve finance. It's just an organizationally complex thing to do. Insourcing has a couple of benefits too, in that it's a hybrid solution which lets you have a lot of the benefits of in-house, but now you can leverage a wider pool of resources. You don't have to go and find a map expert or a digital expert or a DMP expert or any of this new technology stuff. You go find a company that has those folks on staff, and then you hire them to work with your team directly. The big thing that you see there are the integration challenges, because now you've got people, resources that are not really part of your company embedded in a lot of your core business processes and capabilities, so you want to make sure that you think through that integration really well. And then the last is the classic outsource. The great thing about classic outsourcing is it's the fastest ramp. You're leveraging expert institutional knowledge in a set of capabilities that are operationally already running in an external organization, so that's great. That's something that you can't underestimate. The big thing though, and this is something that I absolutely want to make clear, is outsourcing doesn't mean it's hands-off, because when you outsource something, it actually puts a bigger overhead on your management. An outsourced team, a good outsourced team, will do exactly what you tell it to do, which means you have to be able to clearly articulate what you want it to do. So there's a lot of focus on delivering good strategy, on making sure they understand their goals, and making sure that they know where you want them to go instead of them just sort of sorting it out on their own. So when you think about all of those different options and you think about how to apply it to yourself, we do want you to think about a few considerations underneath that to kind of help you frame the right answer. One of the things that we want you to consider is life expectancy. How long is this thing going to last? If this is something that you're going to have up and running and it's only going to run for a short period of time, that makes outsourcing, bringing it in-house a little tough, because by the time you ramp the team up, the window might already be closing. So that's a great time to think about outsourcing or insourcing. Now, when it's longer, that's better, but it doesn't mean that just because it's something that's going to be a long-term scenario, it doesn't automatically mean you should consider in-house. Outsourcing is also a good, stable approach for that, because what it lets you do is it lets you build a set of people whose capabilities will grow as the outsourcer brings in capabilities. So just think about the life expectancy, where it sits, and how it's going to affect your decision. Another very important consideration is whether or not you're thinking this is a core or endpoint capability. If it's a core capability, then the important thing here is making sure that it is working absolutely well and able to deliver exactly what you need it to deliver. So with that, what happens is you've got to look honestly at how well you think you can do it. If you're a large organization and you've got the resources, staff, and IT chops to bring in something really big and run it in-house, then by all means bring something in-house. If you're a smaller organization and you might be a little resource constrained in terms of how you can support or how well you can support a core technology, then outsourcing actually is not a bad option, but it's just something that you have to consider. And the same conversation happens with endpoint, but with endpoint a lot of time it's focused on time. And then the other thing to consider is how often you're going to use this thing. As a rule, the more common something is, the more you want a little bit more control on it, and the more that you want an ability to influence that, versus when something is rare, it may not be worth staffing it up when it's only happening every so often. But again, these are not specific to either or. What we want you to think about is look at all of these things and then map it to the strategy your company has. Your company probably has a point of view and an approach to this insourcing, in-house or outsource question, and you want to make sure that the way that you think about it fits that and is aligned to the larger strategy that you've got. Just use these as sort of guideposts to think about the considerations.
Okay, so that was great, Gil. Thank you so much. And we're going to get to questions very quickly here, but just again to recap, we've talked about the common roadblocks that can be overcome with that framework you brought to us. Technologies and capabilities, definitely not the same thing, and that mapping this out in the right way will definitely be able to help us guide our effective decision-making around the technology and the operational decisions. So what I'd like to do is open this up to questions. Okay, I'm going to take a look and see here at what we have. Here's one question for you, Gil, that came through. What are the top 3 capabilities that SiriusDecisions recommends every B2B marketer have?
That's a great question, a big one. When we look at B2B organizations, what we want to be able to, there's some things that every organization, regardless of how they actually do, the kind of business that they do has to have. The first thing that we always talk about is you have to know your customers. So you need a set of technologies that tells you which customers to go after, which customers you're actively engaged in, which customers are purchasing. So a customer data store, prospect data store is absolutely critical. The interesting thing about that capability is you can buy it in a map, you can buy it in a CRM, but that technology is something that you should have somewhere. The second thing that we talk about is because now it's been proven that personalization and targeting and making sure you're delivering the right content is the right approach to generate the most revenue, the most interest, etc. And frankly, your customers and buyers expect that. So the other thing that we want you to think about is you need something that can help you track the engagement that you're having with the customers so that you understand where they are, what they're looking at, and what they probably need next. So some form of ability to track that customer as they go through the journey. Again, you can buy that from multiple technology sets, but that capability is something that you should absolutely have. And then the last thing that I'd say is in this data-driven world, you need to be able to collect the metrics, which is challenging because you'll probably have it coming from different sources. So you'll need some kind of data analytics tool that can collect the metrics and, probably more important than that, help you derive insights that you can then turn into actions from that data. So the ability to track and identify customers, the ability to see where they're going and make sure that they're getting the right information at any given point in time, and the ability to see what's happening in terms of analytics and generate insights out of that. Those are the things that we would say are sort of non-optional.
That's great. So here's another good one that just came through. I'm already invested in a lot of technology. I'm sort of stuck with what I have. Is there a way I can apply what you've talked about today to get more out of what I have?
Absolutely. I think one of the greatest sort of challenges and opportunities that marketing organizations have with technologies is the amount of untapped capabilities they already have in their existing systems. So what I would say is use the concept of a capabilities map to really understand what it is you need and then go back and run an audit at capability level. Again, not at a technology, not at a feature benefit level, but at a capability level across the technologies that you already have. Because what you'll find is there are probably capabilities embedded inside the systems that you've already bought that you didn't even know about. So the capabilities map and an audit will help you maximize what you already have, and then it'll also tell you what you really, really need that you don't have to get your business goals, and if nothing else, that'll help you build a case to go back to management and say, I know I have all this stuff, but these are the capabilities I need to really accomplish my goal, and this I can show you I don't have. Can I go buy it? So that's the approach that we would recommend in that scenario.
Okay, so this one's kind of related and came through. So it says, how do I involve my IT department in the right way?
IT, sort of the dance partner for marketing. Now,
yes.
The way we think about it is a lot of times what marketing organizations do wrong or sort of do improperly with IT is they bring them in at the wrong time. I've straddled the line between marketing and IT for years, and the worst thing you can do to an IT person is show up and say, hey, I just bought this, can I plug it in? Or even showing up to them going, I'm thinking about buying this, just say yes, right? Because in that situation, you're putting an IT in an untenable position. The right time to bring IT in is actually at the capabilities map level. Because if you can show IT why you need certain things and what those capabilities are, a good IT partner will help you find those things because they understand why you need it and that you don't have it, and this is something that you should obtain. But if you just show up and just start asking them to sign off on technology, that's not going to fly at all. So once you get your capabilities map, sit down with your IT counterparts and have the discussion around the capabilities that you need, and you'll find most of them to be perfectly willing partners and will help you build out that map, because honestly it gives them a view of what the company needs, and IT groups will love it when they have a clear view of what marketing's asking for, and that's what the capabilities map will help them identify.
That's Great. So those are the questions that came in today, and I know we're want to get everybody back to their day. So first of all, Gil, I really want to thank you so much for your time and for helping us with a very easy to apply structured mapping approach to defining capabilities. And for everyone else out there, I want to thank you also on behalf of MX Group. And we do have an ebook on the topic of marketing technology you might find interesting. If you're looking to assess where you're at on your modern marketing journey, we also have a tool on our website for that as well. And we hope that you'd like to follow our blog. So thank you very much for your time, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.